See the advanced weaponry the U.S. is deploying to the Caribbean. Oh, snap. Yep, here's Trinidad. You've got Venezuela. Venezuelan flight monitoring area. Ooh, a lot of equipment outside of Puerto Rico. Special operations vessels, destroyers, cruisers, landing helicopter docks, Ospreys. Oh, these are sick. When I did flight training, I'd see these land next to it around me. They're so cool. A subscriber flew one over my house, and I'm like, oh, that'll make you shake in your boots. That was awesome. Anyway, Reaper drones, Globemaster 3s, Poseidons, F-35s. These are awesome. Even just the outlines of them. This is pretty big. We are moving equipment over to Maduro. U.S. troops deployed in the Caribbean versus the estimated requirements for a Venezuelan ground invasion. We're not going to stop fear-mongering the Wall Street Journal. We're not going to ground invade Venezuela. This is ridiculous. Like, I don't know about you, but this is the kind of stuff that always makes me a little nervous when I see stuff like this. Venezuela mobilizes troops and militias as U.S. military looms offshore. U.S. military with Blackhawks is doing quite a bit of training in the Caribbean, sort of like off the coast of Trinidad and otherwise. In part because Donald Trump has suggested he authorized the CIA to conduct ground strikes inside of Venezuela. He obviously refused to say whether or not he would authorize any kind of strikes on Maduro, whom he thinks is illegitimate. But Trump's argument is, hey, we're going after the drug cartels because they're bringing drugs into America, whether it's fentanyl or otherwise, and they're killing Americans. And so now you've got Blackhawks doing training missions off the coast, essentially of Venezuela, off the coast of Trinidad as well. And so now Venezuela is escalating apparently by moving troops into position on the Caribbean coast and mobilizing what Maduro is asserting is a millions strong militia in a display of defiance against the American buildup in the Caribbean, the largest since the 1980s. I mean, this is part of Donald Trump's peace through strength plan, and you have to give him credit for what's going on with Hamas. Now, of course, you've got splinter cells of Hamas because they don't have unified leadership doing stupid things. They're a dumb terrorist group. But understand that Donald Trump's strikes on Iran were so ballsy that they did shake the boots of Iran. Now, I have to say, I was questioning, I'm like, okay, how much did we actually shake the boots of Iran? We didn't hit Pickaxe Mountain. Construction is continuing at Pickaxe Mountain. There are reasons to believe that Iran moved their highly enriched uranium and that they can rebuild. But the fact that Iran didn't support Hamas in this peace deal, in rejecting the peace deal, suggests that Iran has been humbled. So Donald Trump's strategy here worked for now. Now, is Iran potentially going to rebuild? I don't know. How many more nuclear scientists do they have left? Israel took out quite a lot of them in coordinated attacks using U.S. weapons. Remember, we can send weapons up into the sky that float around and circle, and they all strike us. It's insane, the weaponry we have. Absolutely insane. This is why Putin's shaking over the idea of tomahawks going to Ukraine. And Zelensky's like, give me my tomahawks. I'm coming to DoorDash my tomahawks. And that's why Putin had to give Trump another history lesson yesterday for 2 hours on the phone. But anyway, this is Donald Trump's MO. The strongman regime has cracked up its propaganda machine. On state television, announcers are telling Venezuelans that the U.S. is a Nazi-like state and wants to dig its claws into the country's oil wealth. But that the Venezuelan military are positioning to repel any invasion. And it's unlikely that there would be any kind of larger invasion from the United States. Typically what happens with these Black Hawk training missions is that usually you're delivering Delta Force or Spec Ops forces, Navy SEALs or otherwise, or even CIA assets, and you're dropping assets into the country, whether through stealth or otherwise. And so there's really no expectation that the United States is going to go to war with Venezuela here. This is, really just, as the Wall Street Journal here puts it, propaganda by the Venezuelan media. But it is true that, Donald Trump is going very aggressive. And after, whether the drug facilities, drug making facilities, the distribution networks inside of Venezuela. At the same time, it's convenient because he doesn't love the leaders. So what you really do is you undermine the leader's credibility. So on one hand, you're fighting the drug war. On another hand, you're also undermining the leader's credibility, and you're hoping that people potentially either overthrow the leader or vote for a new leader or otherwise, or whatever. Okay, Venezuelan armed forces, which military experts say on paper is 125,000 soldiers, are shown marching in formation with troops mounting armored vehicles and boxes of munitions. The country's Russian-made fighter jets are featured in footage, shooting across the sky. Ooh, people are ready for combat, ready for battle. I don't think this is really going to go anywhere, but anyway. The U.S. has moved advanced weaponry into the Caribbean, including 8 Navy warships, attack submarines, F-35s, Poseidon spy planes, Reaper drones. Dude, I see these spy planes all the damn time by the airports, and they don't turn their transponders on, and it pisses me off so much. Turn your freaking transponder on when you're in American soil, or over it. Anyway, I know that's not the modus operandi of the military, and people think, but Kevin, they shouldn't be seen by enemies. You're not an enemy when you're over Camarillo, California. The Pentagon has deployed elite special forces operations, including the Army's 160th Spec Ops Aviation Regiment called Night Stalkers. Ooh, that's hot. The unit flies missions for commandos such as the Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Delta Force, famous for their involvement in the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Large troop-carrying and attack helicopters are part of the mix. Damn. The Pentagon also dispatched bombers. Oh, the B-52. Donald Trump is obsessed with the bombers, the B-52s. Absolutely obsessed with them. So far, the U.S. has carried out at least 5 strikes on drug boats, killing 27, an unusual display of American force against narco-trafficking, narco-terrorism. Some American lawmakers say these are extrajudicial executions. Like, the problem that you have is people are claiming the Trump administration does not have any evidence to say that these were actual drug traffickers. And so you're really relying on U.S. intelligence to say that they are. Now, I happen to have a little bit of a U.S. bias here, where I'm going to make the argument that the CIA and, our Coast Guard probably have enough credible evidence to where I'm not, like, shaking my boots over extrajudicial executions. They're probably right. Do we have a 2-year court case to prove it? No. But this is, that's the military. And Donald Trump is licensing them, basically, to do what they need to do to get their job done. So good for the military, great time for the military because they can actually get done what they want to do. And ultimately the goal is to keep Americans safe, to keep drugs out of America. And the lower the supply of drugs, the higher the cost of drugs, and hopefully fewer people are using them. Of course, then you have, stupid areas like San Francisco that almost like encourage this. It's just sad. But San Francisco's actually started to get a little bit better, parts of it. Like you actually go towards the piers and some of the nicer areas, it's getting a lot better. So there's improvement coming. It's almost like it's coming out of recession. Just a Reuters update here. 2 alleged narco-terrorists were killed and 2 survived a drone strike yesterday on a cartel drug trafficking semi-submersible off the coast of Venezuela. The survivors were rescued last night by the U.S. Navy and transferred to a Navy vessel. Oh, well, we got 2 of them now apparently captured. Look at that. Venezuela is hardly ready for any American action. The economy is in free fall, predicted to contract 3%, with inflation to hit 682%. This is very, very bad, mind you. When you have such levels of inflation, you would rather just go buy bread at the local grocery store the moment you get your paycheck because you don't trust the currency, like anything but this. And again, I don't think there's going to be any kind of actual standoff between the Venezuelan military. I think there's a very clear, hey, we're going to not respect your territory here, and we're going to go in and kill who we need to fight the war on drugs. And unfortunately for you, Venezuela, that's also going to undermine your Venezuelan credibility. That's why Maduro is warmongering here, going, we're ready to fight. Because he has to maintain any kind of personal credibility. Otherwise, people aren't going to have any, they probably already don't have any faith. But anyway, that's important to know. So we'll see. I know some people are worried, these things, you need a jury to execute people or whatever. But this is more than that. The way the Trump administration is branding this is narco-terrorism. So, if Hamas is pointing a gun, for example, at U.S. soldiers, they're gonna get shot. They're gonna die. There's no jury involved. It's straight up law enforcement. And so that's the faith you have to have in the U.S. military operations, that they're not going and killing innocent people, that they are actually killing people, that they have somehow verified are bad or terrorists to some extent. That's the argument. Now, of course, people are going to have two sides on that. But other people in the chat are saying short fishermen. Yeah, fishing will probably fall because I think you're going to create a cloud of fear over there. But anyway, we'll see. So we'll see. That's what's going on in Venezuela and what's going on with the geopolitics. So keep an eye on it. But I don't expect too much more drama out of it. I do expect strikes deep within Venezuela. I don't know that I would expect an overthrow of the government because then you do also risk a power vacuum. You know, when you take out Maduro, for example, you're going to have a power vacuum. You would have to install a puppet. And puppet regimes usually don't last. So I think the complexities of overthrowing the government versus just undermining the government don't lead to a desirable reason to overthrow Maduro. I think you're better off having that knucklehead with a crap economy and then taking out the drug lords than getting into some kind of prolonged conflict trying to reform government and democracy build. Yeah, see, this is not about replacing the regime. It's that psychological warfare. I totally agree with this. There are two remarkable parts of what President Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, what he said and what he didn't say. The president confirmed a New York Times scoop, published a few hours earlier, that the president had authorized the CIA to conduct covert action inside the country as part of a campaign against Maduro, the authoritarian leader who clings to power. That was a remarkable statement because presidents typically don't acknowledge directives that allow spies to accomplish a secret mission. The whole idea is having a CIA that is allowed to operate in the shadows and conduct deniable operations. Right. The CIA's got their hands on so much stuff, and then we're like, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, yeah, there. Used by almost all presidents since World War II, and is something along the lines of, I don't know what you're talking about, but if I did, I couldn't comment. But in this case, commenting may have been the point. Privately, the Trump administration has said they want to drive Maduro from power. In context, warships massing off the Caribbean coast and bombing narco-terrorists are psychological warfare. Trump hopes to scare Maduro into exile. Trump added pressure on Wednesday when he said the next step might be a land attack. It's just a game. Which takes us to the second point, what Trump has never talked about, and he has declined to explain. What interests are being served here? How is this America first? Stopping the flow of cocaine? Well, that makes sense, but in the case, the Navy is on the wrong. But in that case, the Navy is on the wrong coast if it's cocaine. I think he's been pitching fentanyl, but let's see. They probably addressed that too. Drugs headed to the United States largely come from the Pacific coast, not the Caribbean, where the naval buildup is happening. Access to oil, that's what Maduro's government claims, but there are ways of negotiating over oil short of military or covert action. All right, fine. Reviving democracy, maybe, but that doesn't seem to be a big push for Trump. Interventions passed, okay, so which leaves regime change an all but certain explanation. Exactly, but you could accomplish that regime change by slowly picking away at the credibility of the Maduro regime rather than having to, actually like take him out or go into some kind of all-out invasion, which we don't see that. The problem for Trump is that his pretext for action keep falling apart. Intelligence agencies have already shot the idea down that the Maduro government is sending criminals to the United States to sabotage them. The analysts were either shut down or fired. Drugs are an issue, but Venezuela is not a source of fentanyl, the most damaging narco import. Its ingredients come from China and are brewed in Mexico. And Trump does not advocate regime change in those nations. Really good point. It might be helpful to the president and his aides to remember that a former Times reporter in a book called The Mission reminds readers of what happens when regime change operations go wrong. Think Iran, Guatemala, and the violent overthrow in South Vietnam. This is why I'm saying you don't really want to have, to replace the leadership, because then you have a vacuum. And that's bad because you get something worse. What you really want is a weak government. And I think that's what Trump is doing. He's trying to weaken him, to make him look weak, and to make people doubt Maduro, and to make people inside Venezuela go, we like what Trump is doing. We don't want Maduro. That's what's happening here. This is a game. No, I agree.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.